What's going on, everybody? This is Jacob Baffle for the final build update of my single 12-inch subwoofer box 4th order build. So before I had a 10-inch in here, and now I'm going to give you a step-by-step everything I kind of did from previous 2 parts. If you watched it or not, suggest you watch those. This is pretty much a final plan I have with the specs of the box, everything I've done to change on the box, and then kind of where the specs will be on the tuning, port area, ratio, sealed section, ported, etc. So definitely got a lot of work I put into this, at least a couple of days working on it. So it doesn't look like it, but you never know what somebody does to a box and time-wise. So I'll go ahead and get started. So before that, just want to say thanks everybody for always watching and being subscribers. Go ahead and hit the like button if you like this kind of content. I hope you guys are learning stuff. And anybody working on 4th orders, maybe I could teach you something in this video. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And it doesn't have to be just 4th orders, any box in general. So first off, I got my wires ran. So I went ahead and moved my wires from the back to now up here. I'm going to be running 2 positive, 2 negative instead of 1 and 1, but like before. And I went from, I think it was 10 gauge wire to now 8 gauge wire, since I'm going to be running more power. I'm also going to be running 1 per each each terminal. So I actually have my wire ready here, ready to be loaded when I get the sub. It's just some terminals on 8 gauge that's going to be wired direct straight to the actual mount. So my ported box, my sealed section, so before it was single baffle, and it was the cutout diameter was right there for under 9-inch, 9 1/4 or something like that for a 10-inch subwoofer. Now I literally added 2 more baffles, so now it's triple baffle, as you can see, and I opened it up the diameter, so now it's right at 11 1/4 diameter. So a 10-inch subwoofer box. Now as I previously discussed, I was going to actually take this subwoofer box out, which I did. I did take it out, as you saw in the previous video, and actually change boxes, make a new bigger box, but I did not do that. I actually just added 2 layers, and that kind of helped compensate for my sealed section cabin gain. So before, the box was right at 0.9 cubes, or yeah, like 0.9, 0.85 cubes with the subwoofer mounted into the enclosure. So now it's going to be right at 1.1 cubes with the mount subwoofer in the enclosure. So this is going to be right at a cube, solid cube net after sub displacement. Planning to have the subwoofer mounted regular, non-inverted, because of the ratio, plus a little bit better cone control pressure within the ported enclosure cabin. And I'm going to be able to actually have a little better cone control, giving this all the power it eats. So that subwoofer is going to eat this power up. So I'm hoping to give it at least 3 or 4K clamped. So there's on that with the wire in the sealed section. So triple baffle. I don't know why I did single baffle on the 10, but hey, it is what it is. This thing ain't moving. This thing is screwed in with at least 15, 20 screws or more on the off panels on the side top of it. So this has kind of helped brace the actual enclosure too. So that's for that. I added a round over here. So all of these things I've done is kind of to help me to where I identify what my specs are of my enclosure, and to kind of reduce the ported side. So the ported side was really big. So without building a new enclosure, what can I do to reduce the actual ported side specs so it's not as big of an enclosure? Is add some 45s, add some roundovers, add some blocks of wood. And really that's all I can do to reduce it in bracings. So I added a PVC and a 2x4 round over here, taped over it, so you can kind of see that. So there's a round over there. I added a really big 45 in this corner, and then I added a medium 45 in that corner. So, and then I also added this 45 here, you can see. So there's a 45 I added here. This one's going to kind of drop in with my loading wall, so you won't actually see that. And then once my loading wall is in place, then I'll be able to actually seal off and tape over this and pretty much guarantee everything is in good state. So I literally added about 0.8 cubes total. Almost a whole cube in wood, PVC, roundovers, everything. Baffles added to it. So all of this stuff, almost a whole cube added to this box. That reduced my port area, my port square inches. Or cubic foot, sorry. My cubic foot of my ported enclosure. So I think it looks really good. Let me know what y'all think. It's not the prettiest, especially with the tape. For some people say it's ugly. But hey, I'm happy with it, and that's what matters. It's all about the person's build. Go ahead and hit the like button if you haven't, like I mentioned earlier. So I added the 45 in here. I think this is a good idea, not just for removing some of my space, but also there's a dead space corner here I remember seeing with sawdust buildup. on this edge. So there was maybe somewhere that the subwoofer box was maybe either leaking, or there was just a spot where pressure was getting trapped. So hopefully that helps. This roundover was added not just to take away some port space, but also for the way the pressure flows around. So the way this is going to work is the pressure subwoofer bounces on this loading wall and then kind of rolls around there and then goes around that 45 out to the port here. And we're going to see how it does. It's going to take a while to break this sub in. This is a 6 Spider FISP4 V2 plus 15 extra motor slab. It's ferrite motor. It weighs around 70 pounds for a 12, which is pretty heavy. I mean, it could be heavier, but it's custom built. Rated at 3,500 watts, underrated. So probably going to give it 3,500 watts music on clamp power, and then burp will probably be around 5K, hopefully, depending on my rise. Do some videos on that. I had, oh, one more thing. I had 2 pieces of this wood in here. 1, 2. I took one out, so I kind of literally just beat the crap out of the box and took one of these out because I had screws on the bottom and top holding it in and glue. So that way it gives me a little bit of extra space in here to work around in my enclosure. Also, for me to be able to get into these corners, add 45s and kind of work with the enclosure. So that was also removed. But I think it looks good. Let me know what y'all think. Perfect cutout. Last time I used a jigsaw, this time I use a router. You could definitely tell a difference in the circle. It looks perfect here, but with the other one, it was really cut kind of crooked because a jigsaw is not as efficient as a router. But dead on. So in the next week or two, I'm expecting my sub probably within 2 weeks. So the next video you guys see will be subwoofer updates where you'll actually see the subwoofer. You'll get to see some unboxing video. You're also going to see some review of the sub, kind of see the motor shot, the coils, how it looks, what it reads, quality, and then of course installation and testing. Breaking in the sub and maybe some free air. We'll see. A couple of different opportunity videos there, but it's looking good. I'm happy with it. Oh, for the guys that watch all the way through, this is going to be beneficial for you. I kind of have specs on my other phone that I'm actually going to share so everybody can kind of see. Normally people wouldn't share stuff like this, but you know what? I'm doing it for fun. I'm not worried about anybody getting any private information or anything. So, but before that, I'll just show you one more thing. So the loading wall here, if anybody hasn't seen how that works, let me get this up. So, sorry, I had to set it down to do this. So, this is my loading wall right here. There's my loading wall, double baffle. So what this does is, you see this is a double baffle all the way down. Will fit all the way up here, drop it in place. So just like that, just realistic, and it slides in and tightens. Zip screws on the top, on the side, on the side. So another thing you could consider, especially if I wanted to be fancy, is I could actually cut out here and add a plexiglass slab right here, so I could physically see into my subwoofer at any given time. So I mean, that's something else I could consider in the future if I really wanted. But I'm not really worried about it being like that fancy and pretty. But it might be a good idea to do, so I can actually see the subwoofer with some plexiglass. I just thought about something, maybe another project. Anyway, but that's that. So that's how the loading wall loads in. So I know somebody asked me about that. They're like, Jacob, how do you get into the sub? How do you get to the sub, Jacob, when it's so small and tight space? And then, of course, all right, I'm going to go to the specs for the ones still watching, like I mentioned. So this is all the stuff I have typed up for my enclosure. So my subwoofer is a 12-inch. The cone area is 113. My sealed specs for my enclosure are 1.1. The circle neck, which is these 3 baffles, is right at 0.13. So you got to also consider that whenever you do your enclosure specs for a ported enclosure or a sealed enclosure. Make sure you compensate for that circle. So if you're a triple or quad baffle, that's adding even more space to your enclosure. So you got to consider that. So. And then my ported gross is 8.2. So 8.2 would be the whole box before all displacements. So now the displacements are, the subwoofer's 0.22 for the motor. The sealed box is right at 1.78. That's the whole enclosure, gross. The first 45 is 0.29. The second 45 is 0.12, so 0.29. So right at a third of a cube. That one's around 0.12, so an eighth of a cube. And then third 45, which is right here, is like half a 0.05, so 0.04 cubes. My roundover, this roundover here is 0.1, so a tenth of a cube. And then my port brace here. This is just a little brace I have. I call it the port brace. And then my final specs of my enclosure are sealed 1, ported 5. So I have it down to the nickel, so right to the 10th. So 1.01 sealed, 5.82 ported. Port area is going to be around 75% to start. So I'm going to start around 85 square inches, which is going to be 14 high by 6 wide. So right now this is 9 wide. Once I add my 45 in here, just show you concept real quick. I'll start big and shrink, but there's my 45. That'll be right at around 6 to 7 square inches. So, or inches wide. So that's going to give me right between 80 and 95 square inches of port to work with. The port area is going to be a little bit bigger for the actual 12 than the 10, so that'll kind of help us with view and point in here and cone control, especially with the enclosure, ported enclosure also being really big. A bigger cone is going to make it more efficient for the enclosure too, even at a bigger ratio. That 10 really did struggle in here working on. It was right at 7.5 cubes. I had 7.5, right at 7 to 7.5 cubes this ported enclosure was, where that subwoofer was working on. And now it's going to be right under 6, as you just saw on my phone. It's going to be 5.8 cubes. So literally over a cube removed between everything added, just about. So that's the build update for today. Hope you guys like it. Subscribe if you haven't. And stay tuned for a really big update with the subwoofer when it comes in. Later.